Several years ago, my wife and I fulfilled a dream to move to a tropical island. And now we'd like to invite you to join us in this three-part video series where we finally fulfill another dream, which is to have a kitchen island in our island home. Doesn't matter whether you're here for information, for inspiration, or just entertainment, we've got you covered. Hi folks, Chris Schmidt, Key West Makers. Today I'm going to show you how I made a beautiful kitchen island out of this Cuban mahogany that was salvaged after Hurricane Irma, plus some mahogany plywood I had laying around in the shop, and a little bit of birch plywood for the frames. Now there's an awful lot going on in this build, so in the main window I'm going to start breaking down this mahogany according to my cut list, and down here in the corner I want to point out a few important design details. The first thing I want to point out is that the island uses basic cabinetry construction with a few modifications or twists. And you can see from the back here, it looks to be one huge piece, but it's actually, if you come around front, two separate cabinets with a dishwasher in between. Although on the back here, there's a panel, and then there's some framing inside to keep it all together. The larger cabinet actually has a divider down the middle, and if you were to buy these pre-made, you would end up buying two individual cabinets and screwing them together. Secondly, there's an overhang here for seating on the back. And at this end, you can see we have an extra long panel. That's how we handle it. And on the other end, the far cabinet is actually angled on the back, and that angle comes out all the way to the overhang. Third, I like to bring my stiles, the vertical pieces, all the way to the floor to make it look like a piece of furniture. And fourth, the base here where the toe kick mounts is actually a separate piece from the cabinet. The cabinet is just resting on top of that. I'll get into that during the build, why I do it and how to do it. Let's get back out to the shop and have some fun. You can see what the mahogany now looks like, that it's been planed on both sides and it's flat. It is 3/4 inches thick. And I've taken my cut list here and I've marked on the ends of each what pieces are going to get cut out from each. So now I'm just going to cut those up on the table saw to their widths. I can actually leave them just a hair over the width and then run them through the planer on their sides to clean up those saw marks. And then with my sketches, I'll start assembling the face frame. And I like to start with the face frame before I make the cabinets. Then if there's anything that doesn't look quite right, perhaps a drawer you want to be a little bit bigger, or one cabinet smaller, one cabinet larger, you can make those adjustments much easier to the face frame than once you've made the entire cabinets. With all the parts made, it's time to start assembling them, and they will be joined by pocket hole screws. All of the rails, the horizontal pieces, get pocket holes drilled in them so that a screw can join them to the stiles, the vertical pieces. I have got my two face frames. You can see there's one small cabinet I have here in my hand, and then there's a bank of cabinets, a pull of garbage and a sink side by side here. I've actually taken these in the house and set them up in the kitchen where they're going to be, and I love the way it looks, so we can proceed from here. These face frames are good the way they are. Now we can use this face frame to lay out the cabinet build, or the carcass build itself. On the edges, I want the side panel to start in a 1/2 inch from the edge because I need some trim strips. Here I actually want it a 1/2 inch in from the sink, and on the other end here I also want it a 1/2 inch from the edge. So I'm going to lay this down, make some markings where I want the panels to be, and then take some measurements and I can start cutting the carcass out. And based on the markings and measurements from the face frame, I know that I need to cut a piece for the base that is 49 3/8 by 23 1/4 inches. So manhandle this piece onto the table saw, we'll get that piece cut. You may notice that I pre-finished these pieces of plywood before I started cutting them up. You can also buy these pre-finished with polyurethane on them. I don't have access to those, so did it myself. Much easier than finishing the inside of the cabinet once the cabinet's completed. After I get this cut to length, I'm also going to mark the location of the dado for the cabinet divider here, and then cut that dado, boom, into this piece. Well, funny thing, I hooked up the vacuum, but I never turned the vacuum on, so oops. Hopefully you can see the layout lines here for the groove, the dado, and again, this is the base of the cabinet, and that groove is to hold the vertical panel, the cabinet divider. To make this groove, this dado, I have a very simple setup here. First of all is a bit with a bearing on it, and I have made this little jig exactly the width of this piece of plywood. I'm going to clamp this jig right down in place, put this little bit in my router, and then ride that router right on the guide here. And this cutter, this bearing rides on the sides here, this cutter will eat out the groove there. With the cabinet bases cut, I can now cut the sides, and I'm going to use this mahogany, half-inch mahogany plywood because I happen to have it laying around. And after I get them cut, I'm going to put a groove in the base of them where they meet the base of the cabinet. You'll see that, and how they match up. And then when that's all done, I'll cut this divider and we'll start assembling the cabinets. I would usually clamp the entire cabinet together, but this half-inch ply is a little bit special, and so I'm going to glue just the base to this side, let that dry, and then come back and finish the glue up of the carcass. So the glue is dried here, and I've flipped this back on its bottom so I can put in the middle panel and the end panel. A couple things to note here. I have gone to 1/4 inch deep dados and rabbets. I used to do 3/8 inch. I like 1/4 inch deep a little bit better. That 1/4 inch depth is more than enough to keep this in here at 90 degrees perfectly. I didn't do any extra clamping to get it to 90. I squeezed it in there and it stuck at 90 degrees perfect. It is dead on. Also, because this is an exposed side panel, this is a little bit longer than the other one. You'll notice that the other panel, which is an interior panel, actually stops at the bottom of the base. You'll notice that this panel this side also extends back past the back of the base, so the countertop will overhang the actual cabinets and have room for your legs underneath. So the back panels are going to be a little bit deeper than the rest of the cabinet. This middle panel, you're also going to notice that it does not come all the way to the back of the carcass. The back panel is going to sit flush up with it. You'll see that again when we do the back panel. You can see the sides and the dividers are now installed in the cabinet and it's assembled. The cabinets don't get a top, they get a brace. And there's a couple of ways you can install these braces. I've chosen to put a notch in the top here. I will cut braces to the length and then screw them in from the sides. I know what you're saying. Chris, this side is going to show. You're going to see the screws, but we're going to put some trim strips around the outside panel there, and you'll never see those screws. Now these braces don't really offer any support for the countertop. They really keep the sides and the divider from moving apart from each other. And at the front here, it's going to give us something to attach the face frame to. Now this other cabinet here, or the other part of the cabinet I should say, actually gets a farmhouse sink in it. So there will not be a brace at the front, just in the back. So we'll measure, cut, screw, install those. Another quick point, this brace is getting screwed in from the inside of the cabinet, and you're probably asking, hey, what if you need another brace here? How are you going to screw that one in? This brace has to stop here because of the farmhouse sink. If that was not there, the divider would stop here. It would not go all the way to the top of the cabinet, and my brace would be one continuous brace all the way across. Then I would screw into that divider from the top down. Get it? Time to attach the face frame. I've got the Carcass laying on its back, and there's overhang of the face frame to the Carcass. Typically, if I do painted cabinets, I will just use trim nails and glue to hold this on. But since this is exposed wood or varnished wood, you'll see those nail holes. So I actually want to use dominoes, floating tenons, to attach this together, and I need to make some real good measurements of how the face frame aligns, how much overhang I have on each end. So I'm going to do that quick, then I'll put the dominoes in, and we will glue and clamp this up, let it dry. At this point, the basic cabinetry is done, and though I mostly showed the build of the larger cabinet, the smaller cabinet is also done. It does have some weird angles on the back. If you have some questions about that, if you have a similar situation, hit me up in the comments. I can give you some details on how I put that together. And now we're at the point where things really start taking shape. We're going to put the base in, bring the cabinets on, set them on, put the full panel in the back to connect it, put all the trim on, put the sink in, the countertop in, then we come back and start working on the drawers and the cabinets. But as you may have guessed, that is going to have to wait for the future episodes. We are out of time for today. But if you hit the subscribe button and that little bell, you'll get notified when that video comes out. I want to thank you so much for watching this. That's all we have for today. Chris Schmidt signing out for Key West.